All right. So what I'm getting from you is that it's fairly common. Is that correct?
For parasites.
The bacteria.
Yeah, yep,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
it
All
can be
right.
naturally occurring, and some people with a strong, healthy immune system can fend it off on their own.
Okay. I just
Yeah,
I wanted to get that out of the way before we start. So we're talking about bacteria that lives in your body. I took a test. I have it, apparently. You've had it. We started talking about it last time we got together. We're digging a little deeper into it today. She is an acupuncturist, master herbalist, um, just really knows her stuff about physiology and all the stuff going on here, and is very transparent about stuff as well. Rebecca Wendler Burke is our professional of the year, and she's back with us. So this thing is called
Clostridia.
Clostridia, and I took a wellness test. This is not, your typical blood test or typical urine test where it shows up. You have to pay for it, which I did. Yeah, had some suspicion. Somebody suggested I do it, so I did. That's what it came back in terms of the lab results. But then we started. This was over the summer, and I kind of put it on the back burner. I wasn't really having any symptoms. Typical occasional digestion. We all have it. But then somebody said, well, maybe that's caused by that. So then we start talking, and then I'm learning more about it. And this is something that you've experienced. So this bacteria, tell us about that before we even get into how to eradicate it.
Well, okay, so it can be a byproduct of metabolic functions for some parasites, and those would be whipworms, and things like that. It can also be a naturally occurring bacteria that you can pick up from the soil. Um, People can find it on a pap smear, for bacterial vaginosis. Those kinds of things are typically present in a culture and things like that. And if you have a strong and healthy immune system, your body can get rid of it naturally. Um, it does help to create a highly oxygenated environment that will kill it because it is an anaerobic bacteria. And if you look it up, that it does say that there needs to be more research done. Like some
Hmm.
some research says that it's gram positive, some research says it's gram negative. Like it's kind of it's a moving target a little bit. But
Wow.
with you, in so far as you had high levels of the acid that it creates, and I can't remember exactly the acid. It's a long word.
Yeah.
It,
Don't even ask. Don't look at me on that one.
it
I
I know
I
you
forgot the
texted it to me.
I forgot the name of the bacteria already. I mean, it's
Yeah, Clostridia.
Clostridia. Okay,
Yeah.
Clostridia.
So given the high amounts of acid that it's producing in your body, it would behoove you to maybe do a hyperbaric oxygen therapy to oxygenate your blood. It would create a non-hospitable environment for this bacteria. Now, that being said, too, if we're talking about, maybe the metabolic byproduct of a parasite, like I mentioned in our previous interview, it's not a bad idea to just do a protocol to eliminate parasites, just to kind of take that whole spectrum out of the equation. So, like we mentioned in our last interview, that doing something like Paragard is a good idea. Adding a capsule of oregano oil, and kind of like titrating up to having it with each meal is also a good idea. But that can be somewhat challenging for the good microbiome, the good microbes in your body. So you do have to be careful with that. And then doing something like a vitamin IV therapy would be very helpful.
Hmm.
And in cases where you have high acidity, doing sodium bicarbonate IV therapy with the vitamins is helpful because it helps to neutralize the acid and create a more alkaline environment. And how that pertains to oxygen is a whole other topic. So those things would be, in my opinion, your best route of action. Now, I know that they are probably recommending that you do a colon cleanse and things like that, but if you, or like a kind of clear out your colon and things like that, you could do that, but if you continue to have the prevalence of the bacteria or the parasite, it's, just kind of cleaning out your colon isn't necessarily going to eradicate the problem. So,
Gotcha. And especially if, in fact, it's caused by a parasite, which hasn't been determined. So it sounds like what I'm getting from you, and tell me if I have this right, that one with this, and again, apparently bazillions of people have it, this bacteria, um, treat it as it's a potential parasite causing it, which, as you identify too, that parasite could have came from, you went to a restaurant, had a hamburger, could have come from there, anywhere. Treat it as if it is, make it so that it's not a wonderful environment for it to eradicate the parasite. But then when you do that, you're changing your acidity level and everything, and the good bacteria. So now you have to support the good bacteria
That's right.
after the treatment, if you will.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, and so taking a probiotic is a really good, you know, is really good overall, and I highly recommend doing that at night without any food or anything like that because then it's actually working on your microbiome and not digesting or helping to digest the food or the supplements that you've taken. So a good hour, before and after taking this, taking a probiotic is a really good idea.
So would you take and you told me to get some capsules, and I have them actually, came the other day, haven't opened it yet. Um, and we're not selling anything here. It's
Mm,
just, stuff that you've
yeah.
you've either tried or it works. Um, the capsules, would you take that also with the good bacteria?
Yeah, it's the cap. You mean the Paragard?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would do the Paragard with your meals, and you want to work up to, taking the maximum dosage. But I would take the probiotic again at night, like no food, nothing like that, so that it's actually affecting the good microbiome. You're reclaiming your microbiome. That's kind of the key.
Should people be taking probiotics anyway?
Yes, but there is kind of a threshold. Some people will take it for constipation. Some people will take it for diarrhea. It's my
Hmm.
understanding that once you get to a point where your bowels are relatively firm, then you should maybe kind of come off of it a little bit. Your microbiome is probably pretty functional. So, and then there's of course like the prebiotic, like what the hell is a prebiotic? And I like to kind of suggest that you can get that by eating proper foods. Like bananas are high in prebiotic and onions and radishes and stuff like that. And so those are things that you would want to preference for the morning. So you want to start your day with prebiotics and you want to end your day with probiotics.
So what happens if you take too much probiotics?
Well, I mean, not too much. It's a good microbiome. What can become problematic is taking too many prebiotics and fiber. That can create kind of an
Oh,
overgrowth. Yeah. And so Olipop is a new soda on the market. It's got 9 grams of fiber.
oh
It's
wow.
a prebiotic soda. And I was like super excited about it. I was like, oh, I'm gonna switch out my evening cocktail for an Olipop. But then it's like tons of, and I like had a serious problem, which is why I decided to do the GX Assist from doTERRA just to kind of clean out like the overgrowth because I just like created a really bad environment. Like, and also too, one of the things that is interesting when we're dealing with overgrowth from bad microbiome, in a mold situation or in a parasite situation where you have this overgrowth, some people don't do very well with fiber. And that's because there's that bad aspect of the
Oh,
microbiome that can cause, just like some some intestinal fire and stuff like that. So it is highly complicated. It is a moving target, and you're best to consult a nutritionist, a dietary specialist, an herbalist, and things like that, just to get it right. So you're not creating an unfortunate environment in your gut.
we may be doing all of this stuff. Let's say that some of us are a little more proactive. So we maybe, take a glass of fiber. What's that stuff called? Psyllium something?
Yeah, psyllium husk or
Right,
metamucil, yeah,
right.
or even like flaxseed.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of
Hmm.
us may be doing that just to keep things moving. And I'm not going to say we're doing wrong, but we may not be fully supporting what's going on there because we don't know what's going on there. We just think, backed up a little bit. Let me take some of that psyllium husk or whatever in a glass, which I have in the cabinet, even in my office in the studio. I have it, you never know. So I have it there. It's almost like taking it's like thicker than Jello.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
it settles in the water. So that's actually in your system. But maybe you need that. But we don't know what we need. How do you really, Rebecca, what is, I guess, boil it to the basics. What is the baseline here? You want to make sure that your immune system, your digestive system, everything is all in sync. There's so many tests out there. How do you clean the slate and start fresh?
Well, okay, so working with an herbalist or an acupuncturist who's going to be able to recognize the state of your earth element, which is the spleen and stomach dynamic in your body, which is sort of our core, is a really good idea. It would be up to your own interoception. So, are you having, do you have hemorrhoids? Do you have heartburn? Do you have bloating or gas after a meal? Those would be things to consider in thinking, okay, well, maybe I need to address my gut microbiome. As an acupuncturist and an herbalist, I don't necessarily use blood tests. Like I will take somebody's pulse and I will look at their tongue. Like, is there a thick coat on the tongue? Is it pale? Is it dusky? Is it red? Is it scarlet? All
Wow.
those things. Is the coat white? Is the coat yellow? So a white tongue coat indicates that there is some cold stagnation in the gut. A red tongue coat means that there's some fire in the gut. So and both of those things can be, a sign of food stagnation. So
Hmm.
um, mhm, yeah, yeah,
And spot on there about the tests. Like as I identified, the Clostridia test for that, and I wasn't taking a test for that. I was just taking it was a basic urine test through a wellness company. Um, that's where that was identified. That wasn't through a routine blood test or routine urine test, which usually you get when you're doing your yearly workup or whatever. You got to ask for that, and
mhm,
insurance doesn't pay for it. So a lot of this stuff we wouldn't even know what's going on unless we consult with somebody like yourself or take one of those tests. Um, which I'm not
yeah.
gonna, I'm not gonna. It's for another podcast, but that insurance companies don't support stuff like that. I think is ridiculous because
Yeah,
this stuff leads to other stuff.
yeah,
Crazy.
yeah, yeah. The insurance factor is a really problematic one. I always
Yeah.
kind of like ask is like, well, does your insurance company have your best interests at heart? I don't know,
Yeah. Again, we won't go there.
Yeah, we won't go there. Yeah.
It's just, it's just ridiculous, but whatever. Um, So if somebody's concerned, what would be their first step? Let's say, they got a little of this going on, a little of that going on. Yeah, things aren't way wonky, but yeah, maybe digestion's a little off. Maybe they're feeling, bloating, things like that. The starting point would to see somebody like you or
Yeah,
consult with
go
somebody.
go
Yeah,
see an acupuncturist. Yep. Yeah,
really.
our mechanism of evaluating the state and the health of the earth element is bar none the best, I think, in a health industry. That's just it is in Chinese medicine is it is the center of everything. And it makes sense, as we can try and align ourselves better with the soil and how that pertains to our microbiome health, is really important. It's,
So
you know.
interesting, and I'm getting a clearer picture of this, but you mentioned soil.
Mhm.
Seems like it's very impactful. And then I'm thinking soil, okay, vegetables, fruit, the meat we eat, the animal is eating things, grains that came from the soil. It's all going back to the soil here, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
If we can focus on soil health, like if we like the idea that we would monopolize the food industry and we would create, sort of one crop for any given environment grossly underestimates the power of the dynamics of the planet. And we need to eat a multiple, lots of colors, and we need to diversify our gut microbiome, and we need to diversify crops and make sure that they are rotated properly to replenish soil nutrients and things like that. It does not make any sense to me to think about just growing one crop. And that
Uh,
then that the humans would just eat one thing.
it just it's coming clearer that the soil is so important here for our health. Everything is coming from the earth. I never thought of it that way. Maybe it's me, but how important that is. And that's what the starting point is. And oh, yeah, what do we put into the soil? Pesticides.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. And then maybe you have a problem like, it's not a bacteria, it's a fungus like valley fever, where you kick up a little bit of fungus from the soil. The soil's been depleted, the good microbiome in the soil is no longer there, and people can get, a mold toxicity from just that. Or you've got Clostridia, where, there's an overgrowth in the soil, and you can get that kind of infection from the soil. Like it, focusing on the planet's health eventually will make us make better choices, and we will be the sort of like the saviors sort of for the planet. Like it's such an intricate relationship, and we need to be that steward for our planet. We're not, we don't have anything else. Why would we think about like going to Mars? Like that doesn't represent our gut microbiome. It doesn't,
Right,
like
right. Or I
yeah.
forget what planet they recently, maybe it's Venus, I'm not sure, but the theory is there is like 5 miles of diamonds underneath the surface, just underneath the surface. Like, yeah, great. What are you going to do? When we're all, falling down because our soil is damaged, tainted, and but we have diamonds. What's that going to do for you?
Yeah.
And then, to the point, you could have all the money in the world, Steve
Yeah.
Jobs, Apple, and you get ill. It's not going to help you. Potentially, it's not going to help you.
Mhm.
Um, Acupuncturist. So many of us have that block up, needles, all that. Um, how does the acupuncturist connect with everything here that we're talking about? I'm trying to make that clearer connection.
Well, so our ability to take the pulse and look at the tongue definitely is a representation of all of the things that are functional or not functional in the human body. And then using a needle and the understanding of different elements as they pertain to one's balance or imbalance, we can either tonify or reduce sort of a prevalence of like okay, so for example, I've mentioned before that the liver and the spleen have this interesting relationship. We say when somebody has liver qi stagnation, we say in Chinese medicine that there's a husband-wife split. So the liver is not communicating with the spleen. The liver's job is to purify the blood, and it's the spleen's job to give the blood that has been transformed from food to the liver. And so there's this sort of like give take relationship that happens. And when the liver becomes stagnant, it oftentimes doesn't have the right amount of blood, and it will become demanding, and it will sort of like encroach in the spleen's environment. And in Chinese medicine, that can be viewed as sort of a gnarled oak tree with all of its roots exposed in the soil, where there's very deficient soil, but there's all these roots, and the roots are not getting the amount of soil and nutrients that it needs. So the oak tree becomes gnarled and kind of dry and withered and things like that. The wood element historically in Chinese medicine should function like bamboo. It should be very flexible and sort of sway in the wind and things like that. And so people who are blood deficient, they are oftentimes very rigid. And maybe they are, one of those kinds of people that can't deal with a needle because they're so rigid in their like protection mechanism that
Mm, mm.
yeah. So I've seen, there was an interesting story actually when I was interning. Um, there was a gal that she was going to undergo a bunch of blood tests, and she was deathly afraid of needles. And so she decided, I'm going to go get acupuncture. I'm going to try and overcome my needle phobia. And it took like 6 months to work up to 3 needles with this woman. And she was like a cat on the ceiling. Every time the needles came out, she was just like, oh, I can't, And so, very interesting. After 9 months, she told her boss to F off. She, changed her relationship dynamic. She became more empowered in her own body. And at
Mm.
the end of 9 months, after getting only 3 needles in each of her sessions, working up to it, she didn't need the tests anymore because she had resolved through acupuncture this sort of like boundary issue. And it's such an interesting example of, when people kind of have a major needle phobia, I'm like, okay, so perhaps this person has some boundary things that they need to address.
I
You know,
totally understand it. And in some regards, that was me. Um, and I may have shared it, but I'm going to share it again because I think it's important, the mindset. Every time I had to take a routine blood test, I would put it off. I would put it off. I get to it. I get to it. And I was uncomfortable with it. Part of it was because, well, what happens if I pass out? Or what if all of that? And I got to a point recently, by the way, in the last couple of years, where, like she did, flipped it around and changed my mindset to, oh, I'm doing something that's supporting me. I'm taking care of myself. By doing this, I'm going to get some information. And that information may help me improve my health, or the information may be, hey, you're fantastic, no issues whatsoever. But I'm taking steps to take care of me. And that, when you focus it in that direction, at least for me, it took me away from the whatever the fear of the needle was. And it works. Yeah, yes, I actually was going to take a routine test. I have to make an appointment, probably do it later today, once a year or whatever. But that's that mindset. You just got to get out of the mindset. I know it's easier said than done for many.
yeah. But in addition to doing something beneficial for you, you are also doing something beneficial for the planet. And you are providing an example for people who maybe haven't figured out what their path is. How do I better align myself? How do I get to my optimal health? If you've done acupuncture and you've seen the benefits like I have, I mean, it literally changed my life. Like, and
Sure.
I can be that example, for people like, well, maybe you should try acupuncture because it's going to force you to be more interoceptive. It's going to help you with your boundaries. It's going to make sure that all of your chi flow is proper and your blood and everything. And then you're going to be sort of that better steward for the planet. It's
Never
just,
realized any of that. And after all this time, it took this time for me, and I think for others, to crystallize the soil thing. You always hear it, take care of the planet, the environment. Pesticides been going on for a number of years where that's on radar. People saying you got to watch out what they're putting into organic. Now I see it, even
yeah.
right down to the animal. Never thought of it that way. Everything that we consume, that we should consume. I'm saying that because there is stuff that's chemically made, and you shouldn't even go near that. It all comes from the soil, so
Hmm.
just
Yeah.
more important than ever.
It is more important than ever. And I just want to say that the trauma component of our subconscious understanding of how the resources of the planet are being extracted affects us. It is a universal trauma that needs to be overcome. And if we can, yeah, I mean, for me, it's just a philosophical mind blow to think like,
My mind is blown. It
yeah,
is. After this conversation, all the things that I've heard just came very clear about what's important. We're out of time, Rebecca. How do we? This has been great.
yeah,
I learned a lot here. How do we connect with you? Even I know acupuncture we have to do where you're located in Minnesota.
yeah, that's right. In the Twin
Yeah.
Cities. Yeah.
So, um, short of that, if somebody has questions, I'm sure you can consult on many different levels. We've been talking and it's been impactful, and we'll take my pill later today for the first time. But how do we find you?
Yep. I can be found at rwbacupuncture.com. You can plunk in the sharp acupuncturist, no spaces, into YouTube and find a few interviews such as this one. And then you can also find me under that handle on Instagram.
Very cool talking with you. Thanks for all the insight. And my mind is blown, the whole soil thing. It's
Oh, good. Good. I'm glad that I like drove that
oh,
home.
you did. Yeah. And it
Good.
goes right back to why do we need to get grounded? Because the earth is so important.
Because the earth is so important and we have to overcome trauma in order to not function in fear anymore.
For sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Steve.
All right, we'll be right back.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers. day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.